Welcome to this ATA Insights webinar. Thank you for your ongoing interest and support of our webinar program. Today's session will begin in 2 minutes. ATA Insights Webinars is an online platform for the dissemination of professional renewable energy knowledge across international borders. Our aim is to democratize access to information, for innovation to spread faster, and to make the industry more competitive. And we do this through our online sessions, open to all our members. Every year we do more than 100 sessions with over 250 speakers, 50,000 attendees from more than 50 countries. To participate in the session today, use the chat on the right-hand side to introduce yourself, your company, and where you're joining from. Under the screen you will find the Q&A box, where you can send your questions for the speakers. We will get to as many as we can today. We're recording this session and we will send you a link to the materials in a few days. Please consider supporting our content creation for the webinar program. Contact us on the email on screen.
Hello, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are connecting from. Welcome to this ATA Insights webinar on agrovoltaics, which is, it's a very interesting topic and one that has aroused quite a lot of interest recently. And today we have 4 experts with us on agrovoltaics, and it's your chance to ask them questions and to learn as well. So remember that you have the Q&A box, and you can send your questions through there, and we'll answer as many as time allows at the end. And we always have this tradition at ATA Insights that we ask attendees to introduce themselves using the chat function. But before we start, I'd like to get our panelists to introduce themselves. So we'll start in the order I see you on my screen. So from the left, Miriam, please, if you could introduce yourself briefly.
Thank you so much, Carlos. My name is Miriam Di Blasi, and I work in Enel Green Power in particular, and I'm the head of Environment and Impacts Mitigation for the Innovation Department. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miriam. And Maria, please.
Good afternoon, Carlos. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maria Colum. I'm the Energy Policy Director at UNEF, the leading energy solar PV association in Spain. Thank you for the invitation.
And thank you for being here with us. And David, please.
Yeah, hello, everybody. My name is David Jung. I'm a research engineer at Fraunhofer Chile Research Center for Solar Energy Technologies, where we are quite active on the field, in the field of agrivoltaic, and I'm happy to present later. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you, David. And Willem?
Good afternoon. My name is Willem de Vries. I work for Groenleven, mother company BayWa. We are a renewable energy project developer. And I will explain a little bit about our quest into agrivoltaics later, the last 3 years.
Thank you very much, William. And then with that, I'd like to give the floor to David Jung. So David, when you are ready to start presenting, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Carlos. Can you give me a brief feedback if you can see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it perfectly. It's on full screen. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, as I already said, my name is David Jung, and I'm now happy to present on the topic of agrivoltaic, the concept, research, and its potential. Yeah. So I divided my short presentation in 3 blocks. Yeah, first a little context on Fraunhofer CSAT in Chile. Then I will talk about agrivoltaic as a dual use of land concept, and finally talk a little bit about the research with Ecotech Pilots and the potential. So for those of you who don't know Fraunhofer, Fraunhofer is a foundation founded in Germany over 70 years ago. And in Germany, we work with over 75 institutes and over 30,000 researchers, yeah, and are dedicated to applied research. That means we understand ourselves as a bridge between science and industry, looking for the results of basic research and looking for the application in the industry. As said, in Germany, there are our roots, and we are a very big institution in Germany, but also represented worldwide. When we shift our attention here to the bottom left, we see in Santiago de Chile, there are 2 centers of Fraunhofer Chile, and one of them is the Center for Solar Energy Technologies, where we research in the field of solar PV, solar thermal, and business development with a small but very dedicated team. Yeah, this is a brief context. Now let's talk about agrivoltaic. Agrivoltaic was first proposed as a dual use of land solution already in 1981, yeah, and was actually proposed at Fraunhofer ISE in Germany. And the idea was, yeah, to combine the generation of PV electricity with PV panels here and agricultural activities on the same land, yeah, to elevate the PV panels and do under these PV panels agricultural activities. Obviously, the idea was quite visionary at the time, considering the status of the photovoltaic sector. But since then, a lot has changed, as we all know. And now there are several agrivoltaic plants in the whole world, and I'll show you some examples. Yeah, this is one example from Germany, from Fraunhofer ISE, which is quite similar to the proposed initial idea. Yeah, we have here fixed PV panels in a height of 6 meters over crops. Yeah? And here the harvester can pass below and you can perform the agricultural activities. But it doesn't have to be like this. Yeah, the panels don't have to be fixed. They can also be moving, as you see in this example here from France, where they installed tracked PV panels over wine crops. But the panels, they don't even have to be in the height of a few meters. They can also be in the ground. Yeah, as you see in this example here, also from Germany, of vertical installed bifacial panels that generate electricity from both sides. So the first point I want to make is that agrivoltaic actually is as diverse as agriculture itself. There's not just one solution. There are already many solutions, and in the future we will see even more solutions. Yeah. And the second point I want to make is that agrivoltaic is aiming at creating a benefit for the farmer. Also a trend we see recently. And here also more examples. Again, pilot plant from Fraunhofer, where we installed in Germany semi-transparent PV panels over apple trees, yeah, to protect them from rain and hail. So the farmers are already using plastic covers, so they replace plastic covers with the semi-transparent PV panels, generating electricity and protecting crops. Another quite similar example from Netherlands. I think we will hear more about this later, so I will spare my words on this. But also here, the panels are used to protect the crops. And an example from Italy, where they combine the structure of the PV panels, where the PV panels are mounted with netting, also to protect crops, to provide the benefit for the farmer. So having given this brief introduction to agrivoltaic and what agrivoltaic can look like, yeah, we see that there's it's very new and it's very dynamic. And now let's talk about, or I want to talk about the research with Agrivoltaic Pilots and its potential. Fraunhofer CSAT is operating 3 agrivoltaic pilot plants in central Chile. For the most of you, this is on the other side of the world. To be more specific, it's here close to the city of Santiago in rural communes, where we installed 3 pilot plants in horticultural context. Here you see an aerial view of one of the plants, and here's some technical data. The pilots are a fairly small scale. They are made up out of 48 PV panels, summing up to a capacity of 12.5 kilowatt peak, installed fixed in a height of nearly 4 meters. With these pilot plants, we are gaining practical experience, and we are doing research. So practical experience looks like this. We are in close contact with the farmers who are managing the field below, and they can use the machinery without problems. Actually, we do have good response from them. They have no problems managing the machinery underneath the panels. And even they tell us, this was not expected initially, they tell us that they love to work under the PV panels because they really enjoy the shading, especially in the summer months. So in the summer it gets quite hot and the sun is very intense in Chile. So they like to work underneath the plants. But the shading I just mentioned is not only affecting the farmer when he's working in the field, it's obviously affecting the microclimate. And the most obvious impact is the shading. We measure microclimate in various parameters. One of the most obvious impacts is obviously the shading, where we register a reduction of the irradiation of about 30% under the PV panels. This goes in hand a little bit. The main reason is the shading, why we have a higher humidity relatively compared to a reference plot, which is next to the agrivoltaic plant, but not covered by PV panels. And in this case, we don't measure a significant difference in temperature when compared to a reference plot. But what we can see is that at night temperatures don't tend to drop as much, and during the day they don't tend to increase as much as in a reference plot. And then we also look on a crop level, how is this changing microclimate impacting crop growth? And here we did a monitoring of the growth of lettuce. We compared the biomass of lettuce in a reference plot with the lettuce grown underneath the agrivoltaic plant. And here we found no statistical difference. So it's quite interesting. Even though we had the shading, there's no deficit in biomass in on the lettuce grown underneath the agrivoltaic plant. But also we look on the PV side of things. I think it's interesting for many of you here in this webinar. Here you can see it on the picture already in the plants which are installed on horticultural land where they're using machinery and where it gets very dry in the summer. We have a problem with soiling. We can see it here with the eye. Clean panels on the left, very dirty panels on the right. We did a study on this. Obviously here I can only present a brief summary, but the main finding was that in the summer months, we have high soiling rates of up to 0.35% per day. That obviously requires cleaning or even better cleaning solutions. To put this value into context, 3 or 4 months without cleaning, you only have half of the energy production. So it's really a big problem in these areas where it's dry and where they work with machinery that you have to see that your panels stay clean. So having said this and talked a little bit about the research, let's look at the potential of agrivoltaic. And here, I obviously have a little bit the perspective of what's going on in Chile and what's the context in Chile. And here we see that the farmers, they have problems. They struggle with climate events which are extreme. One of those extremes can be unseasonal rainfall. When shortly before harvest you have a rainfall, it's causing big losses. That's why they use plastic covers, but not only they use it because of rainfalls. Also the problem here is intense sunlight. So they get on various crops, especially food crops, they get sunburns on the crops, and that's why they install these plastic covers, netting. This can look like this, can also look like this, and has the aim to protect the crops, but also to use water more efficiently. Because with less irradiation, we have less evapotranspiration and can use the water for irrigation better. So what we do is we take this as a reference. We can, with an agrivoltaic plant, we can obviously provide shading. This is the most basic aspect of an agrivoltaic plant. So there are various ways to design an agrivoltaic plant to play a little bit with the parameters. Here, just some I mentioned: ground cover ratio, azimuth, the ground clearance. And then we design a plant, obviously taking into consideration that the machinery can be used, but we want to provide a shading similar to the shading nets. And how do we do it? we use simulation tools. Here's just a very basic example of 2 agrivoltaic plants with the panels in 3 meters. And we see here how the light is distributing below this plant, or these 2 plants. And we see here, we do a comparison, just changing the azimuth of the plant, the orientation of the plant. On the left, it's towards the north. On the right, it's a little bit towards the west. And we see here that just this change in orientation is impacting the light distribution. We have very persistent shade here on the left, while the shade or the light distributes better on the right. Changing the azimuth is just one way. You can also play with spacing between PV panels. You can work with different technologies like semi-transparent panels. There are many ways. In the end, what we can do, we can design shade. And with this, I want to state that agrivoltaic could enable resilient agriculture and dry and sunny regions by providing needed shading. And now summing up or finishing my presentation, just what we do as Fraunhofer, besides the research, we obviously are one of the pioneers. As I stated in the beginning, the concept was first proposed at Fraunhofer, and we are currently operating 10 pilot plants in Europe, Africa, and South America. You have seen some of them in my presentation. There are currently 10 more pilot plants under construction, and we help industry in ongoing industry projects where we do consultancy and help them with various services, among them the design, the light simulation, crop assessment, or scientific monitoring. Now really finishing this short presentation, briefly stating the vision of Fraunhofer Chile when it comes to agrivoltaic. We want to enable the industry to commercialize agrivoltaic as a sustainable solution to protect crops, water, and the climate with PV panels. This was obviously a very quick summary of a very big topic. So if you have any further questions, here are my contact details, and I'm also happy to discuss later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David, for your presentation. And to everybody in the audience, remember you can send your questions through the Q&A box. There are already a couple of questions there. And next, we have Willem.
Thank you, Carlos. Yes, let me share my screen. If you could confirm in a second that you see it, that would be great.
Yes, I can see it clearly.
Perfect. Well, thanks to David for the broad introduction of Aggregate PV, which helps me a lot put my cases into perspective. Also interesting to see the cases in a totally different climate. What I'll be doing in this presentation is take you through the voyage that we undertook in trying to discover agrivoltaics here in the Netherlands, which is a lot wetter climate and more moderate than Santiago area, I think. So shortly about us. Oh, if it reacts, and it does. We are Groenhaven, a Dutch subsidiary of BayWa RE. BayWa also being the partner of Fraunhofer with the Apple pilot in Germany. And since a couple of years, we have been trying to set our foot into Aggregate PV with the reason that the Netherlands is a quite highly densely populated country, and agrivoltaics offers the promise of both producing solar energy as crops on the same field. I don't need to take you through the broader introduction, as David already did that, so I'll skip this one. And then I'll directly take you to the first example where we started. And this was in Babberich, it's near the Dutch-German border, where we set up our first pilot, first 3,000 square meters. And how did it come to be? Basically, we were in discussion for another floating project with someone. And then he asked, well, my brother is cultivating raspberries. Can't you do something with that as well? And yeah, we couldn't figure out why not. And as such, something started. We also directly tried to involve some commercial and university partners to monitor our pilot, to see, to monitor the results, as we are not very proficient in the cultivation of raspberries. And the setup was as following. In the Netherlands, raspberries are cultivated just like a lot of other fruits under protection of foil, protect it from hail, protect from heavy rains, protect from even direct sunlight, even in the Netherlands in the midst of summer. And on the right side, we tried out 2 different panels, one lighter setup and one darker setup, as you can see. And the results, and I'll go through this quicker, you'll see the installation in a neater way later on. The results that we got is that the differences between the shading amounts were gigantic. The lighter panels provided us a very good improvement versus the dark ones, but still not good enough. And the lighter ones were, just for your reference, 25% transparent. Now, just for your general understanding of agrivoltaics, if you compare it to the example David had, the question is, why do you use semi-transparent panels? Why not just dark ones and put them more apart, let's say? And the reason is that these plants need protection from the weather, from the rain, from hail, etc. So you need to cover them, and that's either with plastic or with panels. And those panels need to be therefore also transparent enough to let through enough light. And what we basically did is try to mimic the classic protection with plastic and with wooden poles, etc. What the pilot learned us in 2019 is that it can work, but we need more light eventually for the plants. We found out that also the 25% transparency does not work good enough. So thinking about our next step, together with the farmer, we figured that a certain transparency could work, around 40%. And we took the leap to go directly for 3.2 hectares. It was a big leap, especially for the farmer, as you can imagine, because it's his farm, it's his livelihood. And we built that one last year in the spring. And we had our first results in that summer, but those results were not the best, as the panels arrived a little bit late, so the plants already started without the panels, etc. But this year we are getting the first results, and they're really, really promising, really positive. It seems that we are achieving as much production under the panels as under the conventional setup, and we are probably even exceeding it, and that is due to the more stable climate, as David also noticed. And I'll take you through some of those microclimate effects, because those ones are really, really important. One would think that only the shading is important, which is actually the most important factor indeed, but the microclimate is very important. First, a picture of the total location. On the right hand side, you see the 3.2 hectares with solar panels, half transparent solar panels. On the left side, you see the plastic. And the nice thing I like about this picture is that it shows it's really doing exactly the same thing. On the left-hand side, the plastic covering, on the right-hand side, the panels, and on both sides, you have the same amount of fruit production. It's beautiful. Plus that, obviously, on the right-hand side, you also have a lot of power production. We have 2.7 megawatt peak here. Another image, as is my background image, which gives a good impression of how much light still reaches the plants here. So a quick tour through the microclimate. The last couple of years, we have had some very hot summers in the Netherlands, reaching 40 degrees now and then, which is a lot for here. But you can imagine that the day that you have 35 degrees, as is shown on this temperature, under the conventional setup, the green line in the graph down here, the temperature under the foil reaches 40 degrees, and under the panels remains 35, which is still high, but still a lot more bearable than under the foil. Not just for the guys doing the work there, but also for the plants. And these microclimate effects are at some moments in summer more important than the amount of light coming in. A more stable climate in the sense of temperature and humidity brings a lot to the plants and gives a lot more predictable outcomes for the farmer at the end of the season. So we also realized that we couldn't extrapolate the outcomes for one crop to another. And we started pilots with strawberries, blackberries. I'm not sure if they're blackcurrant. The other one is red currant, pears, and blueberries. And we are also planning to do one with cherries still. I won't go through all of these ones here because we don't have enough time, but they are comparable setups, sometimes a little bit different because the cultivation is also different. And as David said, it's as the variety is as big as agriculture is. And here on the right side, by the way, the blueberry pilot. So some of the things that are still challenging is that it's a lot more expensive still than conventional ground mounted. And the cost of land doesn't make up for it yet. Just for a part, but not completely. So we are trying to find the right subsidies to make this happen on a wider scale in the Netherlands. For the farmer, the benefit is obvious as long as the risks minimization, but also the lesser investment into crop protection outweigh the reduction in plant productivity. This couldn't work. And until now, we have seen with raspberries, blueberries, that this really is the case for the farmer, that they benefit from the system. And for our specific case here in the Netherlands, the utilization of land is a lot better than with conventional ground-mounted systems. As I said, long payback time, solar projects, which is a challenge. I mean, I need to tell a farmer that he'll be not being able to change something about his land for 25 years, which is a very long time for a farmer to oversee. We still need to get better in engineering our systems so that they fit the agricultural experiences and setups. And as I said, the business case. Thank you very much. Here's my email address. I'm very much open for any later discussions. And as I said, the Q&A is also available. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Willem, for your presentation. Very interesting. I can see that some more questions have come in, and yeah, please, to people in the audience, keep them coming. We'll try to answer as many of them as possible, and then in the interest of time, I'll give the floor to our next speaker, who is Miriam.
Thank you, Carlos. I try to share my screen. Please let me know when you can see.
Yeah, I can see it perfectly.
Perfect. Thank you so much again, and good afternoon to everyone. I want to present the Enel experience about the topic of agrivoltaic. That's a sort of a puzzle, as you can see here in the picture, solar plus agriculture. And in particular, I want to share with you some how it's possible to integrate agricultural activities in an utility scale PV plant. As you know, the growth of utility scale PV plants suffers from one side about the needs of large areas, and from the other one of the scarcity of marginal industrial areas. It means that they are not sufficient to cover this growing need. Moreover, the criticalities about the biodiversity and the habitat loss require practical actions related to the impact mitigation on environment-associated ecosystems. Trying to solve this rebus, the promotion of agrivoltaic could be the solution, fostering not only the climate change mitigation, but also creating shared value with the local communities, thanks to at least the dual use approach of the same land. As you already saw, and as said by David before, there are different concepts of agrivoltaic plants because there is not a specific definition, and the agrivoltaic could be a very important, solution to integrate the agriculture in the PV solar plant. So on the left, you can see, some pictures that David already showed you. So I wanted to only to highlight the potential, criticalities about the conventional type of agrivoltaics about an investment cost. If you can see on the right, you can see the histogram. It's a graph related to a different technologies and the investment cost of different technologies as reported in a public report of TFZ. In particular, the costs are higher from more or less 20% to 116% more than ground-mounted system. So taking into account this picture and also the needs of PV utility scale grow, AGP launched an ambitious program of co-location, cohabitation of agricultural activities in our plants already in operation, in order to understand, the behavior to evaluate directly on field the behavior of different crops and defining a list of optimal ones, and to evaluate also the impact on operational maintenance activities, defining a new daily operational maintenance strategies, and to develop a new business model of integrated management for agriculture and PV. Our program is related to this innovative approach. So with the technologies, ground-mounted technologies, where different activities and mitigation action are under evaluation. In particular, we are focusing on the multiple use of the same land for crops, but also for livestock, the biodiversity preservation with the specific action for wildlife habitat improvement, the conservation and promotion of ecosystem services, especially in areas where there is an agricultural vocation, as for example, promoting the bees or the bumblebees or butterfly colonies. And the last but not least, the collaborative multi-stakeholder approach as the production, for example, with the local farmer of honey, or for example, to promote a new professional operators and so on. In our program, we defined a common methodology in order to follow the same steps, even if the different partners coming from local communities and farmer, university, or non-profit entities, industrial companies, research centers are involved in our project. But so in our idea, we want to promote the disruptive and open innovation approach, but with an homogeneous way, especially for the step of comparison of the results. So this is the methodology that we are using for our testing phase. So the first test, the first phase, the first steps are, of course, the identification and characterization of the area and the plant. And after this, the design phase has been performed. So for each site, we have the different testing area, and these areas are divided in the different multi-testing areas according to the different crops that we want to test, according to the technologies that we have on field, and especially about the climate area where we're working. Our program is an ambitious program because we have different plants equipped with specific ground-mounted technologies and layout in different countries. So it means a different climate region, and we are working with the different partners. As you can see, we have more or less 30 hectares of activities ongoing. So it means more or less 15 megawatts in operation that are following this approach, and these experiments will produce a huge amount of data that will compile it in an atlas to support the future decision and enabling new plans to select the best farming solution, the related business model, and of course selecting the specific the solar technology, local community, and analyzing, of course, the social, economic, and environmental impacts. In particular, we are working in 5 countries, as you can see in this chart, and in particular, we launched last year 9 testing phases in parallel. So the 15 megawatts or 30 hectares, I said before, in order to speed up the data collection, because we know that they suffer of course of the seasonality or the need to wait the phenological cycles and so on. So we designed with our with our partners 9 projects, and this year we started with implementation on field according to the phenological cycles of the crops, and the preliminary results will be available at the end of this year. Here you can see, the list, so a sort of picture, global picture of the activities that we have in the Europe, focusing on the attention in Europe. So we are working in Greece, Spain, and Italy with a different type of crops for testing medicinal or officinal herbs, aromatic ones, crops for food or cosmetic uses, flower or mix for pollinators, and forageous herbs. We are testing, as I say, the different technologies. That is, it's always a ground-mounted system, but keep it with the monofacial or bifacial modules, and we have a different structure, fixed or on tracker system. Of course, each layout, according to our plants, has different pitch, so the distance between the structure. So we are working also in this way in order to understand how the different pitch can impact the possibility to use the land. Here's some interesting picture coming from our testing phase, starting from the preparation phase to implementation 1 and the growing phase. I want to highlight, your attention in the last 2 pictures. The first one on the right, the Hero Leguminous, it's a solution. It's the activities we are performing in a plant of Spain about the creation of an habitat specific for steppe birds, because we know that the area near this plant is a agriculture vocation area, and this type of birds suffer the fact that the agriculture use the agricultural machinery. So in order to protect this type of species, we decided to put this type of leguminous that are interesting because the birds can nest in this type of habitat, and then can be protected by my agricultural machinery. Especially for this type of use case, of course, trying to don't have any negative impact on operation and maintenance, we decided to have a cultivation in alternating the row. The second one here you can see is chili pepper cultivation in our plant with system with a monofacial system on trackers. It's very interesting because the preliminary data in terms of, for example, of leaf dimensions or numbers or about chlorophylla are very promising. So it means that the plant that doesn't suffer, these plants that doesn't suffer about the PV presence. From operational maintenance point of view, there are not specific interferences at this time are highlighted. In some cases, especially for this type of use case, we have a monofacial system, so we measured an increment of production of energy production due to the good impact of the microclimate. In fact, the presence of the plants can create a good situation according to the evapotranspiration phenomena. You see that when we have the bifacial panels, the situation is more complicated because there are also a lot of impacts about a lot of parameters that we are considering. So according to the growth of the plant, the color of the plant. So at this time, no evidence can be freed about the bifacial system. In our test, we are also evaluating a different configuration of crops integration in order to define the best way to proceed with the scale-up phase, considering, for example, the rotation of species, alternating the row with the crops for food, for example, or with the species for regenerative agriculture. So here, in order to close my presentation, the key message to take away, so we can suggest to take into account that the agrivoltaic can promote, of course, not only a renewable, green and renewable energy, but also a sustainable one. The creation of shared value as the sharing of the use of the land, we think that it's very important because it could be, we try to integrate the local community in the photovoltaic life. And in this way, we try to improve the social PV footprint. The improvement of ecosystem services to mutually benefits also of close areas, especially for agricultural vocation areas, improving the yield of their fields or the products. And also the preservation of biodiversity that is so linked, as you know, to climate change and vice versa. The promotion of SDGs achievement, supporting the energy transition, and the new business model to improve local stakeholder relationship and their acceptability related to the PV group. So thank you so much for your attention and for this opportunity. And here you can see also my mail in order to have a question if we don't have time in the Q&A section. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Miriam, for your presentation. I can see that NL is doing quite a lot of experimenting and testing in this area. So yeah, so well, we'll go to our next speaker. And Miriam, if you could stop sharing, please.
Yeah, sorry.
Who is Maria? So yeah, Maria, over to you.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Miriam, Willem, David. It was super nice and interesting presentations. Mine will be more some thoughts from the association on how we see Spain, and will not be so technical. Yeah, as already mentioned, especially by Miriam, agrovoltaics cannot compete now with ground-mounted, especially in Spain. Yeah, we are not a small country like the Netherlands, and the pipeline of ground-mounted projects in Spain is extremely large, more than 100 gigawatts, yeah, in comparison, especially with Italy or Germany, where agrovoltaics is developing, yeah. Also, we don't have a super generous remuneration system in place, like France. Public programs can be a lever for private investment. We see it in the case of France, yeah, with the specific auctions for innovative projects where agrovoltaics is standing out, with around 80 euros megawatt hour, but this is not the case in Spain now. Yeah, agrovoltaic, it was already explained by my colleagues, is still pre-commercial, with around, we calculate according to our members, around 50% of extra cost in comparison with the standard installation of PV. But we still think that it has a strong projection, yeah, even in Spain. Yeah, we are certain that there is an interesting niche for agrovoltaics, and the huge interest, especially the last month among our members. We remember that we have more than around 600 members, confirms it. We have an internal working group, and more than 100 people attended the 2 last sessions regarding agrovoltaics. So for sure, there is a huge interest, and it's confirmed, yeah. Our members are now sharing with us their projects, and as already stated, I think by Willem, wow, they are super different. Yeah, they are working with with a huge number of crops, and the business model is also very different. We have some projects that are working in Catalonia, in an area that is a lot of wind, the Emporda wind, that is very well known. So they found a farmer that is interested in putting some PV panels to block this wind, and it's working. They are now negotiating a PPA, and they are very, very, very happy. Then we have a very nice project also in the Canary Islands, that it's a greenhouse that was abandoned decades ago, and they are trying to restore it. It can go as big as 10 megawatts. They are still, in the administrative process. And we have also many examples, of course, of taking advantage of the shading. As David was explaining, the shading is one of the main interests of agrivoltaics. And also we have some members that are talking to the municipalities, and some projects that were not so easy to continue with the administrative process. They are turning the projects into agri-PV projects, and it looks that it could be easier, to continue with the administrative process. Yeah? So we see advantages also. Yeah, there is, and also, well, there is an opportunity still. It is expensive. Agri-PV is expensive. It's pro-commercial, but we see that this opportunity is increasing, and it will be increasing, especially because the agricultural sector in Spain is extremely big. It's the second one. I would like to remark it after the tourism sector, and the awareness. Traditionally, the farmers are not really aware of the advantage of the renewable energy that they can take. Yeah, but awareness is increasing, so opportunities for agri-PV will be increasing too. Yeah. Also, all the technology evolution that David, William, and Miriam were sharing with us, all these new panels, semi-transparent, will be huge opportunities. And also, and especially regarding, very related to the Miriam presentation, multifunctional solar plants, more integrated, are more and more demanded by society. Yes, and this we can see that maybe there's a numbers also make sense here, yeah, because already plants that are already working, maybe we can find some herbs, or we can share the land with some farmers. I think NL also is working on this, and the farmers, they can use these spaces, and the utility companies or big developers can share the space. Yeah, of course, we need to identify some stoppers, some regulatory barriers. We are working on it, because maybe if it is an industrial land, you cannot commercialize the crops. Yeah, but okay, we'll be working on this, and we'll try to eliminate all of those barriers. Yeah, from UNEF, we are working here, especially in Spain, although we work in some international groups, as Solar Power Europe, the Agri-PV group they have. But here in Spain, we have this internal group, and we are listing barriers and also working in a definition. As Miriam said, there's not a real definition, and maybe for some programs, especially support programs, economic programs, we will need a definition. Yeah, so the funds are well distributed. And also, we are working a lot with the agricultural associations in Spain. Yes, because again, it's super important. They have better awareness. They are aware of all the possibilities in general of solar PV can give them. And of course, we have floating PV, we have self-consumption or standard solutions, but also agri-PV can be of interest. Yeah, one of the barriers that some of our members are sharing with us is that they are looking even to pay for the installation, yet not to earn any money, but at least they need some farmers to do the trials. Yeah. Finally, we rule out the application of financial support to competitive solar projects, but it can be of interest to specific programs for a greater territorial cohesion, a greater economic and social impact, or the promotion of innovative solutions for the competitive uses of the land. And this would be the case of agri-PV. Yeah. Investment aid through calls, as for example here in Spain, Solcan and Solval, that are European funded programs that are already in place in Balearic Islands and Canary Islands, could be a super good start in Spain. Of course, it's not the Netherlands, but of course, scarcity of territory in the Canary Islands and Balearic Islands we have, yeah, especially in touristic islands where the impact on the landscape is very important. This land scarcity, you know, so there it's worth it to have a look and try to see if agri-PV could be interesting there. Therefore, well, the situation in Spain can be summarized: an increasing number of players looking at agri-PV potential, and an increasing number of projects in progress. Yeah, some of them in administrative process, some of them, most of them as pilots, but all of them still trying to do the numbers, identifying where the business cases are. Thank you very much, Carlos. I will share my contact details through the chat if anyone needs some clarifications.
Thank you very much, Maria, for your presentation. So, well, yeah, let's get started with the questions. So I think a lot of the questions have to do with the structures and the height of the structures. And I think the first one, which is actually one of the first questions that came in, was how do you manage the operations and maintenance and cleaning of PV modules at a height of 6 meters? And no, David, you want to take this question, but I'm sure that William would have something to say as well. But yeah, please, David.
Yeah, please. I can start giving you the references from some research project Fraunhofer is doing. In Germany, the panels actually are installed on 6 meters. It's true. And what I know, I mean, I'm not directly involved in this research project, but they don't have a big problem with soiling. Yeah? In Germany, it's drains a lot more. Yeah, generally in Europe, in the Northern Europe countries, it rains a lot more, so you don't have a big problem with soiling. You don't need to clean. Our pilot plants have the panels installed in 4 meters, and we have a problem with soiling, as I stated, and we don't have a solution right now. It's there are many ideas, and I think there's a big potential on combining water use that need to irrigate on the fields. Yeah, you have to bring water to fields either way to create a double use of water. But I think it's another research question. To look if you can use the same water for the cleaning of PV panels also for irrigation, if you have to filter it. So we are working on this. We have this on our agenda, looking for solutions. But as of now, I don't know if there's any already commercialized solution to manage panels installed in this height. But maybe William can give his point of view on his experience from the pilots in the Netherlands.
Well, like I said, we have a very different climate here, so we have not had this problem. First of all, the cultivation that we are busy with, fruit cultivation, is not open soil, so there's very little chance of a tractor creating a dust cloud, which is possible if you look, for example, at crops as potatoes or whatever in the start of summer. But for the rest, we have a generally sufficient rain to clean the panels, so we don't have this issue.
And Miriam, in your projects, what have you learned about operations and maintenance? So how is O&M different in an agrivoltaic project to in a normal PV plant?
Yeah, thanks. Yes, of course, I mean, during the daily, especially, or the not, I mean, expected maintenance phase or daily operation maintenance phase, of course, I mean, the colleagues have to have more attention to, I mean, the crops that are on the field, of course. But we are testing also different type of strategies. So, for example, we try to cultivate, I mean, rotation crops, for example. So we can alternate the lines of the crops in a plant in order to have the possibility for the guys, for the O&M guys, to reach, I mean, to different lines of the PV panels according to, I mean, the specific crops that we have ongoing. About the soiling at this time, we don't have this type of evidence, even if, okay, the test started this year, so we don't have a lot of activities ongoing with the agricultural machinery. So I think that we must evaluate this, of course, even if some of, according to the location of the plants, if we have a plant in an agricultural application area, of course, the soiling could be external soiling, non-soiling. So the dust could be coming from the external, not from the plant. But in any case, we are also testing a robotic solution, not only, especially dry robotic solution, in order to improve and to increase the sustainability and to reduce the impact on the water, and to don't impact on the water too.
Thank you very much, Miriam. And related to this subject, there is a question on the soiling rate that you presented, David, in your on your slides, and you said 0.35% per day, and the person asks whether this is normal for the location or related to farming activity. Yeah,
actually, this soiling rate can be found also in other places in Chile. There are some papers which are investigating on the soiling in Santiago, in the city. But obviously, Santiago, the city, has lots of problem with air quality. Yeah, we have lots of smog here, especially in winter months. So here you have the reason for soiling in the air quality, and you would expect that in rural areas, the air quality would be better. So here we did the eye test. We did watch the tractor work the field, and you can see that there's dust in the air when he passes through. So I think the reason of soiling is obviously a combination of air quality, but also farming, what we see is impacting the dust accumulation on the PV panels, especially when he works in a very dry field, and also when you have unpaved access ways close to the PV plant. Because when you have access ways, you sometimes have cars passing every hour, and this also leads to dust accumulation when it's dry. And here we have sometimes 6 months without rain, and so it's very dry, and we have lots of dust.
Right, thank you, David. And there is a question for Maria. I think that Maria, you mentioned on your intervention that the cost of a agrivoltaic plant is, if I remember correctly, I think you mentioned 50% higher than for a ground-mounted plant. And there is someone saying here 80%, but regardless of the number, 50%, 80% is significantly more expensive. what makes it more expensive? Is it the structures? Is it the fact that you need special modules? So
everything. I would say everything. We have experts here, but I think it goes from the structures that of course are higher, but also the panels, also the design, even the installation. Yeah, we have a project in the north, and they said that, well, I mean, they have huge installation problems because they were designing an installation where crops are already existing. Yes, so it's very difficult not to, you know, to damage the crops that are below. Yes, so we usually talk about the structures and panels. Miriam, Willem, and David will correct me, but also is the design, is everything. Since nothing is a standard, since you need to go project by project to analyze what it's worth it, how much it costs, and we don't have commercial solution. Everything is very expensive. But it's also true that many players are positioning itself in this field because it looks that it can be a very nice, it has a very nice future. So they are learning, and there are companies at UNEF that it's 1-2 years that are already studying the possibilities of agri PV. Yeah, so I don't want to mean that it's expensive. We should not look at it. I think we should look at it because we will be improving the technology every month, and for sure we'll make the numbers work.
Great, thank you, Maria. And what are your thoughts around the panel? So, is there anything in particular that, you know, a particular area that could be attacked, as it were, to make agrovoltaics more affordable?
The islands, for example. Yeah, as I said, I mean, scarcity of territory in Spain. We have this scarcity in the islands, and we already have European funds. It's a question of convincing the government to introduce one of the lines of support to agri-PV, and especially the islands. Scarcity, they are really looking at the impact of the landscape, but also the generation cost in the islands is much more expensive than in the inland. So if you are looking at that, it makes really sense to look at the islands. Yeah, so I would go and look for the islands first. Yeah. And especially, well, and some of our members, I asked them, okay, in France, they are giving around, in these auctions, around 80-90 euros per megawatt hour. How much do we need here in Spain? And they said that maybe 50-60 euros megawatt hour would be enough.
Great, thank you, Maria. And okay, let's go for one of the questions that we have here. There is a question by Andrea Campoverde, and she asks whether the percentage of shade applied to the crops is one key component when designing an APV system. What has been your experience researching shade tolerant and intolerant crops? So I think, David, you wanted to take that question.
Yeah, I can go first, but please, you can complement from your experience. It's a very it's a lot of interest, this field, yeah, to identify crops which are suited for agrivoltaic systems, but it's also very complicated because it's not just like a PV panel where you can calculate, yeah, so much sun is reaching the PV panel, I produce so much electricity. There are so many more factors playing into this, that it's also very regional. Yeah, in some regions it can function very good with this crop. In another region it doesn't function because the climate is completely different. So what I would suggest as a practical approach is just to work directly with the farmers, to work with the agronomists who understand what their crops need in a certain region, and listen to them, understand them, and then trying to identify the crops which need, for example, rain protection, which need shade protection. But it's just so difficult to give a general answer. This is a little bit from what we see in the research. It's hard to generate results which are not just regional, but which can be applied on a worldwide scale. It's very different. It's very regional.
Thank you. I don't know if William, if you'd like to add to that, your experience on shading of like different crops, or.
For sure, shading is one of the most, or the most, in fact, you want to keep an eye on, and it differs per crop. And it also differs at the climate, for example, we are looking at strawberries as well. Strawberries are cultivated in an interesting manner in the Netherlands, that they are cooled during winter and then taken out in phases out of the fridge to have a spread out production. And we are seeing that it matters which one of those phases you are taking with agrivoltaics, because not all of them are receiving as much sunlight, but also not all of them are receiving as much stress from other environmental factors like heat or possible storm damage. So it is one of the bigger factors. It's the biggest probably, but it's not the only one, because the microclimate and the protection against weather influences matter also quite a lot.
Thank you very much, William. And I think one of the questions that was asked earlier on is about the scale, and it was on the chat. I can't find it, but the scale of agrivoltaic. So, you know, what's the minimum size and the maximum size that it could be deployed at? And I don't know, Miriam, if you have any thoughts on this, and you know how. What are the size of the projects you have now, and what plans do you have for scaling up what you're working on?
Yeah, thanks. Yes, at this time, of course, we started with the demo project. So for each plant, we have 3 or 4 hectares of agrivoltaic implemented. So it means 1.5 or 2 megawatts. But of course, we are also thinking the scale up of this type of solution according to, of course, the business model that we are defining. As said by Maria before, it's very important to understand that this type of solution are tailor-made solutions. So it means that we need, first of all, to understand the possibility, the visibility on field, of course, so the impacts on the operation maintenance of the production of energy, the impacts also on the crops, even if for our case we don't have the problem of shadowing, because I mean our system is not so impacting in this case for the plants. In any case, we are working on also with the farmer, local farmer, because we want to, I mean, have a scale up phase of at least some plants that at this time is under demo test in order to, I mean, create a real business, a double business on the same land. So it's possible. Of course, we must understand, I mean, the type of business that the farmer he needs, the types of crops he needs, because in our case, of course, we can implement only crops that are not so high, because we could have a lot of interference with the PV plant in case of fruit species, for example. So I think that is possible. The cost is not so much, because in these cases, of course, we are not impacting with the layout of the PV plant. So I think that next year, because in our planning, this year we have, I mean, this demo test, and the next year we want to start with some scale up phase. So I think that next year we can have, I mean, green light or not with the scale up phase.
Okay, thank you very much, Miriam. And actually, well, there are lots of very interesting questions. I'm afraid that we have run out of time. You know, there is so much to talk about, business models. You know, there are also people from all over the world, which it's always a nice thing to see, and you know, people asking for questions on tropical crops, and you know, there is so much to talk about. I am sure there will be more. We will organize more webinars on agrivoltaics, but I think, you know, like all good things, this webinar must come to a close as well. So I'd like to thank all of you, Maria, David, Willem, and Miriam, for being here with us today, and to everybody in the audience as well. I don't know if you have any parting words for the audience from the panelists.
Well, it has been a pleasure, and I really hope that a lot of people get inspired by this. It's a quest, honestly, but I think we'll make it work. And every location has its own drivers to use agrivoltaics, but it has a big promise for the double land use. And I think at some point it will be, when the scale is big enough, we'll get there to make it work.
Thank you very much, Willem. Maria, I think you'd like to say something next.
Yeah, the same. I'm sure we'll make it work. We'll make the numbers work for agrivoltaics. We need a lot of creative people and companies to work in it.
Thank you, Maria. David.
Yeah, I can only add to this. We need change for sustainable energy generation. We need lots of area for this, and with agrivoltaic we can make a double use of this area and create benefits, not just only to generate energy.
Thank you, David. Miriam, any parting words for the audience?
Yeah, I want to stress that I think that it could be very important to create a common business. So for the point of view of utility scale, of course, we are interested to energy production, of course, but it's not limited to this, because we are demonstrating that a double business on the same land is possible. So I think that it could be very interesting for the audience, for the idea coming from the local community, social in order to improve the social footprint. So I think that the creativity could be very interesting in order to put together new innovative business model and to improve, to support the growth of the solar plant.
Thank you very much, Miriam, and once again, thank you to